No matter what anyone says about marriage or advises to keep the spark alive in a relationship, couples inevitably face crisis. Michael and Caroline found themselves in such a situation after 13 years of marriage. Although they didn't fight or exhibit destructive behavior towards each other, their connection cooled over time. Caroline began to have strange thoughts and realized that she tended to sympathize with younger men. She usually preferred older men, but Jackson's presence fascinated her. His confidence and assertiveness were incredibly attractive. As a university professor, she'd secretly watched him during breaks or when she was studying with a group. When he thought deeply, his face transformed, showing a more mature and masculine side. One day, on February 14, Caroline discovered flowers and a box of chocolates on her desk. At first thinking it was a gift from her husband, she discovered a note among the flowers. It read, "I hope you like them. I chose them because they are as beautiful as you are." As she read the note, Caroline felt uneasy. Feeling uncomfortable, she noticed a group approaching, including Jackson, a young man who seemed to be involved in the case. When Jackson cheekily inquired about the flowers, Caroline realized that he was the one who had given them to her. Later, she asked Jackson to stay after class to talk. Caroline calmly told Jackson that he had given her the flowers, explaining that they shouldn't exchange gifts because of the risk, especially to her. Despite her warnings, Jackson jokingly suggested that the flowers might have been from her husband. The situation took an unexpected turn when Jackson suddenly kissed her. At first, Caroline was taken aback, but then found herself enchanted by the young man's charm and impulsively gave in to their attraction. As their secret relationship developed, Caroline and Jackson met in various places, including her office after hours in Jackson's empty apartment. Their secret meetings became an exciting break from the daily grind, and Caroline found that she enjoyed the spontaneity of their forbidden romance. They shared a secret that everyone kept as a precious treasure. Their relationship, hidden from view, went unnoticed by their classmates. However, their secret came to an end when the group's supervisor stumbled upon Caroline and Jackson kissing in a car. During lunch, a colleague, Mr. Flores, approached Caroline, and as they sat down at the table, quietly whispered, "Enjoy your lunch." There was a heavy silence in the air as they ate lunch. Suddenly, Mr. Flores interrupted the silence with an unexpected suggestion. "I have something for you," he said, and a mischievous smile spread across his face. Caroline, unable to contain her smile, replied, "Are you trying to pass your work on to me again?" "No, something much better," Mr. Flores replied, pulling out his phone. A blurry photo appeared on the screen, showing Caroline and Jackson together. Caroline's eyes widened in alarm. "Where did you get that?" she hissed, looking around to make sure their conversation remained private. The laughter of their other coworker echoed in the room. "You should have been more careful," he teased. "How are you going to explain yourself to your husband?" Caroline was confused. Up until now, she hadn't planned to explain her actions to anyone, not her husband, not her superiors, and certainly not Mr. Flores. She had hoped her secret would remain safely hidden from the world. But now the situation was taking a frightening turn, deviating from her carefully laid plan. Trying to calm her nerves, she cautiously inquired, "What do you want from me?" Pondering his answer, Mr. Flores sparkled his eyes mischievously. He stated that he wanted a small monetary compensation in exchange for his silence. Caroline was stunned at such insolence, but realized she had no other choice. She couldn't bear the thought of Mr. Flores revealing their secret to anyone. She inquired about his financial needs, and he named the amount. Caroline inwardly chided herself when she realized that it was a considerable sum. Reluctantly, she accepted responsibility for her mistake and transferred the money to his account. Once the transaction was complete, Mr. Flores demonstrated that he had removed the incriminating photograph. This gave Caroline some comfort. At the university, Jackson waited until most people had left and went in search of Caroline. He knocked on her office door, but there was no answer. Stopping outside the door, he noticed that no one was inside. Just as he was about to leave, He received a text message from Caroline stating the time and place of their meeting. Overjoyed, Jackson headed to the address provided. After waiting for Caroline for what seemed like an eternity, Jackson began to worry. Finally, a cab pulled up and Caroline got out. Jackson was surprised, since she usually arrived in her own car. Without delay, she said that Mr. Flores had seen them together and wondered what they should do next. Jackson was horrified, clutching his head and pacing the room like a captive animal. Caroline reassured herself that she had already paid Mr. Flores for his silence, but no sooner had she finished her thoughts than Jackson burst into anger. He believed that her actions opened the door to further blackmail from Mr. Flores. Caroline tried to justify herself by explaining that she had explicitly instructed him to delete their photos. Jackson, however, treated her with contempt as an ignorant child, emphasizing the 12-year age difference between them. He asked her if Mr. Flores had additional copies of the photos, causing Caroline to cry as she realized her oversight. That night, she and her lover had a big fight. Caroline returned home in tears, afraid that her colleague would expose her, despite the money she had paid. This was what Caroline feared the most, because not only would she lose her job as a result, but she would also have to explain to Michael the reason for her dismissal. When she got home, she told her family that she was tired from work and had a headache, and then went to bed earlier than usual. She intended to hide from everyone and try to fall asleep as quickly as possible, hoping that when she woke up the next morning, she would find that it had all been a terrible dream. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. In the weeks that followed, things settled down. She stopped seeing Jackson, and Mr. Flores no longer demanded payment for his silence. One evening, she and her husband were sitting together in front of the television, cuddled up, watching a movie when their daughter Zoe came up to them looking frightened. Zoe handed her father her mother's cell phone, explaining that she had received a strange text message. Caroline read the text and coughed, drawing her husband's attention to the news as he leaned over her shoulder. His perplexed expression spoke volumes when he asked, "Darling, is it true?" Caroline remained silent, unable to find the words to answer. Her mother called out to her, asking what everyone now knew about the situation. It pained Caroline to admit her mistake. She had never imagined at the beginning of her acquaintance with Jackson that it would lead to this. Sitting under the piercing stares of her family, she wished she could disappear. She was overwhelmed with shame and embarrassment. "Zoe, please go see your grandmother, sweetheart," Michael asked his daughter gently. The girl nodded, quickly threw her jacket and boots on over her casual home attire and left. The couple sat in silence for a while longer, until Michael urged his wife to be frank. Caroline did not hold back. This short period had knocked her out so much that she didn't have the energy to hide anything further. After revealing her affair, she apologized countless times to her husband. The man, usually stoic and unemotional, surprised everyone by saying that he wished Caroline would leave and not let their scandal spread lightning fast through the small town. It was likely that her family wasn't the only ones aware of her foul play. Caroline burst into tears. She had not expected such a detached reaction from her husband, but she recognized his rightness. She would have no peace in the city, and she might even lose her job. True to Michael's foresight, a few months later, Caroline decided to move to another city and file for divorce. As predicted, family and friends turned their backs on her. The mothers of the students she taught called to share their judgments, and the students themselves flooded her with explicit messages. This led to her and her daughter deleting their social media accounts. The daughter sobbed for days on end. Her husband declared that he had had enough, and the next day they began divorce proceedings. Caroline was surprised when, living in another city, she received a call from Jackson. Jackson made the spontaneous decision to move to where Caroline lived so they could keep in touch. Caroline thought it was a wonderful gesture, and they decided to move in together. Unfortunately, both Caroline's husband and daughter showed no interest in communicating with her. Because of this, Caroline was very upset. cried often, and spent evenings looking at pictures of her daughter Zoe on her phone and watching videos of her when she was little. Caroline felt that she had caused her daughter a lot of pain and irreparable harm, and ignoring her daughter seemed like punishment for her past mistakes.